Good morning. I'm going to make a commentary on lecture 24, The Foundations of Esotericism. Much of this lecture repeats many things that we've gone through and through again, and yet another foundation is laid to understanding the evolution of consciousness through the 7 major earthly planetary stages of consciousness. If you remember, there are 7 stages of consciousness, and within each stage of consciousness we have 7 kingdoms, and within each 7 kingdoms we have 7 forms, giving 49 stages of any planetary body. And within each of those 49 stages we have another 7 processes. So you have 7 times 49 stages in each planetary body, which is, as Steiner says, 343 stages of each of the 7 major stages of evolution of consciousness. So ancient Saturn had 343, ancient Sun had 343, and ancient Moon had 343, and the current Earth is in the middle of that. Atlantis, so the 5th post-Atlantean, or the 5th stage in the 25th round, the 4th stage in the 25th round is the middle point of the Earth consciousness. We are now in the post-Atlantean, so we're now in the next one, and in each of those there's another smaller differentiation of 7 of 2,160 years long. Now that is something that we've repeated again and again, but the major thing to see at this point is the 7 major stages of consciousness, 7 kingdoms through which each of those is developing, and then within those the 7 forms, 7 stages of form. And as Steiner points out, that in the major stages of the ancient Saturn, the ancient Sun and the ancient Moon, the Earth also became physical. So this is the 4th time that we've gone into a physical formation. Now that in the background we can put in, someone just asked me, Catherine, you've asked me if I can draw a diagram. To be honest, it's very difficult, but at the back of the book, this particular book, Foundations of Esotericism, they are diagrams. Very difficult to put a drawing onto these videos. I have actually done a drawing. I'll see if I can share a photo of it on my Facebook page. Possibly there's a photo of it also in the Rudolf Steiner archive at the back of that as well. So the interesting thing is that, as Steiner says, that each of these major epochs, or these major forms of development of consciousness, have these 7 kingdoms within them. And that's the first major step. And then between the major bodies, so between the ancient Saturn and the ancient Sun, between the ancient Sun and the ancient Moon, between the ancient Moon and Earth, between Earth and the future, there is a dissolution that is known as a pralaya. And in this particular lecture, Steiner gives us a little insight into what happens in a pralaya. Mostly we just get a feeling that things dissolve into the greater cosmos and then recoalesce. So there is always a question, what happens in a time when consciousness dissolves? I mean, we could ask that as simple as what happens between when we go to sleep and when we wake up. Where are we? What is the process that goes on? So too, when you could say that the Earth or a cosmic body like a cosmos like our solar system goes into a cosmic sleep, a pralaya, what is happening? And he gives an indication that they are 5 steps. So just as we have 7 steps of these major kingdoms, when the Earth dissolves and starts to prepare itself for another incarnation, or a major step in evolution of consciousness at a higher level, it goes through 5 steps, all in all 12. And so we get into a very esoteric understanding of the number 12, that half of 12 is not 6, but half of 12 is 7 and 5. 7 expressions in the physical, 5 expressions in the spirit. Another way to look at that with matter, so I mean there's many layers where this principle can work for us in the world is between waking and sleeping. So we spend a certain part of our day awake, and then we go to sleep, and we go through a process of the night, and we awaken in the morning, and something has processed. One could sort of ask for evidence of that, and I suppose self-observation is the best evidence. Sometimes we go to bed with a lot of fear or a big process churning in our souls, and we go to sleep in the morning, we wake up with some kind of resolution or a new gesture or a new hope in the morning. Sometimes they can work in the reverse, but through sleep we don't just pick up where we left the night before in the morning. Something new has come in, and so we could ask ourselves, where have we been to do that work? And of course the answer is that our spirit has been in the astral and the mental planes. So too between death and a rebirth. We live a life of 70 to maybe 90 years on earth, maybe a bit longer, maybe a bit shorter depending on one's destiny or what accidents happen to one. But between then and a new birth, we also go through a process of digesting what has happened and preparing for picking up a new gesture in another life. So too with the earth. So the earth and the sun, as we know from these lectures, we've been calling the sun, the moon and the earth one body. Even though they're three cosmic bodies physically, they form one area of consciousness in the universe as one place of evolution, one particular evolutionary cycle in the universe. So too does the earth go through these 5 phases. Another way to try and understand that is with matter itself. We have within matter this principle in science that talks about the conservation of energy or the conservation of matter, that we can't lose matter. But actually what we can see is that a possible process on the light scale or the electromagnetic scale is that we have the infrareds getting warmer and warmer, and then we also have the ultraviolets getting cooler and cooler, and we're starting to realize that matter can be rarefied through heat, can be made softer and softer, becomes liquid, gaseous, and if enough heat is applied, it actually disappears. Steiner says we then have to see how it goes through another range of colors. Matter goes through another range of colors in the spiritual world, and then through the ultra blues, through the cold process of the ultraviolets. We know that's, for example, in the ultraviolet spectrum, when lightning happens, new ions are created. You may not be aware of this, but there's about 80 million lightning strikes on the earth each day. If we took ourselves out into space and looked at the earth, you could almost see it like a flashing globe, not just a blue globe, but a flashing globe of lightning all over the place, and through that matter comes back out of the spirit and materializes in new ions. And so there's a whole realm of science that we'll need to develop calibrated machines to measure that process. In the future we will probably be able to get that. So also with the earth itself, after we've gone through a process of 7 stages, we can start to understand that between the manifestation of matter, the pralaya of the sleep of the earth, and the next stage, so we go through a 5-stage process of digesting the states of consciousness that we've developed before the next earth can develop. At our point in the process of our evolution, we are really at the middle point. Atlantis was the middle point of the middle point, and now that we've come to this time at the end of Atlantis, we are in what is called the round that has 7 post-Atlantean epochs. This is the next stage, so 7 steps of 2,160 years, so about 15,000 years, and then we'll go and move deeper and deeper. We go deeper and deeper into the transformation. In this lecture he talks about how now at this point we will, as human beings, get the transformation of the mineral kingdom. In the next point, not too far into the distance, into the next round, in about 35,000 years time, we will start transforming the plant kingdom and then the animal kingdom, and then eventually in the 7th step of the earth evolution we will also transform the human kingdom. So to do that we need organs of perception. He does actually say when we start to develop these organs, he says we can develop devachanic consciousness. If we want to put that into Western language, we're talking about spiritual consciousness. The first step of this will enable us to follow what happens between death and a new birth. When we get to the next stage, we can start to experience what happens between two major seven, what the seven kingdoms. We can start to perceive what happens between the seven kingdoms in each earthly evolution. And a third stage of that, we will actually be able to go right back to before the rounds. Sorry, I should say between the states of conscious, the states of form, and then the states of kingdoms. Now, those three levels of consciousness can be schooled. Just as a sort of a side comment, there is a lecture that Rudolf gives, a very interesting meditation by which we can develop those three levels of consciousness by expanding our memory capacity within our brain to overlook what happens between our lives, between cultures, and then between big rounds of the earth. This lecture is known as Occult Science and Occult Development. If you don't have that at home, you can Google that and you will find the lecture, Occult Science and Occult Development, where he gives a threefold meditation by which those three states of consciousness can be further developed with time. So that's an interesting one. And then we come to this as I was saying, the development where we've repeated certain things, but now we've reached the point in evolution where we have to start transforming or spiritualizing matter. So at this point, we will see that he actually gives a time frame for this, where stuff that we've actually, through digging up matter, we dig up matter, and then through artisanship, we transform that right down to building, architecture, but clothing, everything that we do by taking matter and putting an idea into it and transforming it. We will eventually have transformed the matter, and then he gives us a time frame for that. I'm just looking that up. Then the fourth round, we will have redeemed the mineral kingdom, and then in the fifth round, we will start transforming the plant kingdom, and in the sixth round, the animal kingdom, and the seventh round of the earth, the human kingdom. Now, the time frames for that at the back of this book, if one is looking for it, is that that will be the end of our. So the fourth round to transform the mineral kingdom has probably got another 100,000 years, and then there's still another 300,000 years for us to do that. So for people who are really nervous or fearful that the world is about to end, it's not. We are just going through a major process of sorrow and of grief. I heard a beautiful reading of Khalil Gibran's poems on joy and sorrow, and that sorrow is like the knife that cuts the wood into a bowl or a harp or a flute, and the joy is that out of the carving of the wood into something that is a painful, sorrowful process, more joy can come in the music or the function that we bring from it. This is a wonderful process that, yes, at the moment we are experiencing this year particularly a lot of soul carving, but the resultant is that we can use the instrument that has been formed through the sorrowful times to bring more joy and music into the world through our souls. This is part of the process. And then finally, one of the interesting things in this lecture to think about is that Steiner says that at this point, our relationships, I'll just dig that out again, he says at the moment, he says that human relationships are determined by the laws of nature, but in the future, our relationships will be formed on the basis of morality. So we have 7 degrees of morality, ethical categories, and depending on how much morality we have developed, we will start to order society according to that. The categories of karma will be indicated in this way. So that's a very interesting thing to do. It's not racism. In the past, it is racism, the negative side of it again. Right now, we are living in the negative form of that, is that people are given categories of class in society by the physical laws of nature, whereas actually we need to be moving towards ordering society according to the morality that we have developed. Bit of a contentious, possibly contentious issue, that one, because we're living in a time where all people want to be equal, and of course there needs to be equal and equitable opportunity. but how we will be able to engage with the world also will depend on the spiritual work that we have done, and what ennoblement of the astral body and of the etheric body that we've undertaken, and how we've processed in the time between death and rebirth. So these are all very wonderful foundations that we need to chew on and work at, and grow to understand more and more. So yeah, have a good day. Sorry, it was probably a little bit all over the place for the moment, but yeah, moving on. We're moving towards the end phase of this lecture cycle, and each one now actually brings in some rather hefty themes that we need to consider and digest in our philosophies, and realize that while there are certain things that are equal, there are also certain things that result from the work that we do, take into consideration that the things we do, say and think actually do have an effect upon us, and that the way we can engage in the future through the ennoblement of our astral bodies also is a resultant of the work that we do, and that society will in the future also start to order itself accordingly. Okay, wishing you a good day. Cheers.